Hey, we're here. We're on the Unlimited. We got Derek Brundle here, and we've been running this Unlimited up in the Northeast, man. Like, where have we been taking it? Like, what have we been doing?
We're up here in Cape Cod today. We're chasing some stripers, and man, we've just been taking this thing all around and catching big old stripers today.
Getting it done. We got another one in the boat on the glide bait.
Oh yeah.
At first, I went over to Mountain Road Trading Post over in Raymond, New Hampshire, and I bought an Old Town. Thing was heavy as a brick, and I was loading car top.
Yeah, it's a great boat. Hard top's hard.
And then I got in contact with David. Jake introduced me to David, I think at the New England Fishing Expo in 2021. And Dave gave me a good opportunity to get my hands on a Stinger Yellow Flint.
Hey, that was a vibe. There was like a time when those were out, man.
There were only 100, I think, 150 of them made? 150?
Honestly, it was before my time when we were making them.
Oh, no
yeah,
kidding.
it wasn't much, and it went along with that
the Smart
build.
Kit or something like
Smart
that.
Kit.
I think it was the Smart Kit.
Yeah, I was like, they're kind of rare, man. Like there wasn't a bunch of them made, but yeah, it came with like the cell block and the
it came with the console up front. It came with the catchboard, all that happy stuff. But I'm happier this year because this year, talking with Jake and a few of the guys over at the New Hampshire Bassmaster Series, this year I was like, I love my Flint. It's just a little short.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because like the Flint, so I'm up here in the Northwest, and I take the Flint down the rivers a lot, but there's a time and place for each model, right? So like, there's only so far you can take the Flint. When you're doing tournaments and stuff like that, the Unlimited and U10 series is gonna be a better fit for you most of the time.
I will say, taking that Flint down the Saco River in Maine, beautiful.
Yeah.
If you guys are ever in the Northeast and you can manage to get your way out onto the Saco River,
that's the place.
Hammer.
I was like, I just went to the Northeast for the first time on our shoot out of the New England area, and it was great. It was all saltwater, all striper.
Where'd you guys fish out of?
Kind of all over and up in there. We were in Plymouth. We even got some video like with the Mayflower in the background. It turned out it's the second Mayflower. As a West Coast guy, I have no contact. In my head, I was like, oh, they replaced all the boards. Like, that's crazy. And I was like, no, clearly that's not what happened. But it was great, man. I had a really good time catching stripers, and I had never been able to fish for them, I think once on the West Coast, but I hadn't gotten one, so I was really excited about that.
They're a lot of fun. The biggest one I've managed to land was a 26. My dad hit a 29 at the docks in Hampton Beach in New Hampshire after it ate 2 full max off my line.
Fantastic. You're just getting it better, like adding to the weight of it.
I have video of it actually because I do a lot of recording on my GoPro whenever I'm out on the water. What was it like for you guys? Like, could you give me a little bit of background on how you came to be a part of the NuCanoe family?
Yeah, so for NuCanoe as a company, it was 2006, so it had been coming around for a while. The owner, Blake Young, started on the project at the same time, but Niemeyer, who from Ocean Kayak, was actually the one who started it. So he started in this area, and Blake came on. I think his original role was something with accounting, so he's like accountant. Within 6 months, that ownership switched over. Niemeyer went to a new project, Blake took it over and was running the company. I started coming around a lot later. 2019 was when I came on with NuCanoe, and I was part-time. So I was on, I think my first role was special projects. Honestly, I just harassed Blake into giving me a job because I was moving to Bellingham, and I was like, NuCanoe is in Bellingham, like I have to work there. And they posted an intern position, and I called, and they're like, yeah, no, that's filled. And as I was talking to someone in the front, Blake walked by, and she said, oh, like, good morning, Blake. And I was like, who was that? And she's like, that's Blake, that's the owner. And I was like, can I get his email? And for some reason I got it. And I was so excited. I harassed Blake. I think I sent him an email every week and called him every other week just to keep tabs. I hadn't moved. I was moving like 8 months.
You had a good schedule going.
Yeah, I was just hitting him up. And in his words, it was either a job or a restraining order. So he gave me a job.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it was great. I loved growing with the company. I went full-time 3 years ago, and small company, many hats. So I'm like the marketing manager, team administrator, I shop GM. It's just whatever is needed that day, that's that's what any of our titles are.
You were the man for the job, basically.
Hey, there's all of us, like anytime there's a thing someone happens to with NuCanoe, that they are the expert and they're gonna make it happen.
And everybody has a part to play, like everything from engineering all the way down to the guys on the product floor who are
Yeah.
moving these products along out to the community. Because I gotta admit, like, I made a mistake buying the Old Town the first time.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think everything has a spot in the industry, and I do believe like a rising tide boosts all ships, right? Like, so it's great to
Absolutely.
see where we're going, and I think at this point in the industry, everyone's kind of starting to kind of fall in their lane of like what they do and what they do well. Um, ours, a big part of it is that versatility, man. Like keeping the weight lighter and being able to throw and go in these different situations and the customizability. So in my mind, we do take a pretty good chunk of that to be the right kayak for it, but. You're right, man. Like where some of these other brands have their kind of drawbacks, like we really fit that niche pretty well, and for the weight, it's a big one.
Absolutely. And that's really interesting that you bring up customization because like that is definitely my biggest attractant towards NuCanoe as a company is you can go wherever you want to go with these. You can
Yeah.
go salt, you can go river, you can go lakes, you could fish Lake Champlain all the way down to your mom's backyard kettle pond. And they're golden. In your opinion, do you think that was kind of like the aha moment for the company of like we're looking for a kayak that has a lot more deck, that has a lot more customization, kind of brings it more to like that bass boaty feel?
I would say yes. When the aha moment was with the Frontier 12. So the classic had come out and stability was the main thing. Like open it up, let people do whatever they need to do and have it be super, super stable with the classic. And then putting the track system on the Frontier 12, I think is where that, again, before my time, but
Yeah.
James, the same designer from the era, uh, that was really the aha moment of like, oh, we can make these be whatever you want them to be. And then you see the other brands start like really branching out this sit on top, customizing fishing thing, and all their features were built in, and all of ours were built to attach onto, and that's where you saw the split. But that was the Frontier 12 would really be where that took off. And I mean, the Frontier 12 held on as an industry leader until the Unlimited came out. I mean, it just ran for years and years.
I come across them even occasionally on Marketplace, but that's even just a testament to the design process for NuCanoe is even even as what I would maybe call a less recognized company than companies like Hobie or Old
Yeah.
Town, or maybe even Bonafide, because I didn't even know about Bonafide until after I knew about NuCanoe. That was
Mm.
when I started going down the hole. I've heard about Hobie, I've heard about Old Town. Who's NuCanoe? That just shows they're a solid boat. They're good on durability, they're really good on balance, and I rarely see an unlimited, let alone it's hard enough to find a Frontier 12 out here on Marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, we're starting in the Northwest here, so I used some mold here. So we had some early sales here. I mean, obviously, a big part of what we do is all over the country, but I have dudes bring in classics like from the first run, and who are like, I knew Blake. I picked up this boat in like 2008 from him, and it's like really old, and it's been sitting under their porch the whole time. And I'm like, oh yeah, I got more, and they're like, no, just fix this one for me, make this one good to go. And like it'll be
Yeah.
all these years later, I have one crack, I'll like weld it up for them, and then they're just on their way. Like they love it, man. They're good boats. They last a long time and they can
I've
really
seen
grow with
like
you.
one or two of the classics, and that really was like I saw that and I was like, so that's where they came from.
You can like
Wow,
see
that's
that
actually a
relation.
really interesting like setup for a kayak slash canoe. Hence,
Yeah.
I'm guessing the name NuCanoe.
NuCanoe. Yep. Yep. That's it, man.
And one of the coolest things that I see about you guys is it's not just fishing that your
Yeah.
boats are utilized for. And with
Yeah.
that in mind, like between hunting or fishing or even just people doing, I just saw a video from the Guggen Squad. They just got a NuCanoe flint that they were using for that video.
Yep.
Um, what are some of the funniest or unusual things that you've seen since your time working for the company done with any model of NuCanoe? Flint, Unlimited, Frontier, Classic.
Yeah, honestly, with you kind of nailed the open platform. There's so much you can do. The first things I'm thinking again, fishing's number one, kayaking's hunting is number two. Yoga is a pretty big one. We have
No
people up here in the
kidding.
Sound specifically. They'll go out and they'll go out in the salt, like so. We're basically a bunch of inlets. They'll go out in the inlets and they'll just do yoga on their flints and unlimiteds,
No
and
kidding.
do gong sound baths as well, kind of out in that same environment on the kayaks.
Oh, my
Which is
girlfriend would love that. That's
photography is a big one, and then we have a photo of a guy. I forgot who he is. But he is cliff. He's like climbing cliffs, and doing like free solo over water basin type stuff. And his kayak is like in the background, so he used it to get to the cliff edge, and then like to kick it out, and then he would free climb, and then plunge, and then get in his kayak. And I was like, that's genius.
that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Such an easy
So.
way, and one of the beautiful things about kayaks as a whole to get to like such like isolated points, places that people probably have barely ever touched.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And then the thoughts about like these new areas, how do we get to even crazier spots on them? And it's cool, man.
It is wild, and like that kind of brings in like that must have been a challenge in and of itself, just to get your kayak to those cliffs and to be able
Oh
to
yeah.
scale up, jump down, get back into your boat. So in your time, and maybe you can speak to further as a company as well, like what were some of the bigger challenges, maybe from when you came in or what you've assessed with NuCanoe as a company?
I think it was streamlining the DIY world of kayak fishing, and the NuCanoe fits so well and still does into that DIY. So people were cutting out starboard, drilling in, like doing all this stuff and segmenting and segueing that into like the quick connect system now and plug and play and T-bolts and top load. And that was kind of a struggle for the whole industry. And I think it's something that took a lot of engineering on our part to like take things, strip them back down to the blueprint, like redesign them, see how we can make it more plug and play. And you kind of see that with the quick connect evolution. If you've watched NuCanoe, you know like the start of like quick connect was really like the H2 Pro drive. So the H2
Yes.
Pro was like the pivot drive precursor. Some of those components kind of started the wheel. And then it was the EPS system, the first one with like the cut down Minn Kotas and stuff.
Yeah.
Still very DIY. We had someone kind of doing some of that for us. And then it was like, take it a step farther, take it a step farther. Now you see like the clean, polished, single foot steering quick connect system. So it's kind of just like this labor of like process and engineering going into it. That was kind of one of the biggest things.
It's funny you talk about like DIYing motors because I remember when I got my Flint, my first goal was I was hell bent. I'm like, I'm putting a trolling motor on it. I'm getting a bow
Yeah.
mount. I'm putting a troller on it. Wow, XI3s are $1,800. Oh my God. My first trolling motor that I put on a NuCanoe Flint was an old Motor Guide wireless W55 trolling motor. I found
Okay.
one on Facebook Marketplace,
Hmm.
20 bucks.
Hey, can't be 20 bucks.
Nope, but the motor was seized a little bit, and I hadn't gotten any experience in tearing apart like the actual lower end of those older Motor Guide motors. So I just bought a new XI3 lower end because it's plug and play, fit right in, and
Yeah.
wound up putting a new lower end on it, cutting down the shaft myself
Yep.
down to a 36-inch shaft, going through that whole process. So I can only imagine like the labor of love that went into figuring out things like the pivot drive and the EPS system and
Yeah.
just getting motors and propulsion down to a science on there. Now,
Well,
was the
and a big
pivot drive for you guys like a requested item? Like, were people pining for a pedal drive for their NuCanoe? They're like, I love this boat. I just wish I didn't have to paddle.
I the pivot drive, it's one of those things again, that was dropping around the same time I started, and it was a lot of hype and it was really cool. I think the industry as a whole at that time demanded pedals.
Yeah.
Like we're such a good motor focused company. It was like before that really took off well. So we were doing motors, but everyone's like, yeah, but no one's really motoring at this point. Like, I want pedals, I want to be pedaling my kayak. So it was kind of like, how do we do pedals differently? And that's when it was like, we'll drop it on. We don't want to go through the whole boats are from the front of the back. Like, how do we stick with that and all that kind of thing? So it came from a demand of the industry almost more than consumers at that point. And it's never been as big of a piece for us as motors became, like right after that. So like we were on the uptick of motors. We've been riding that one really well. I mean, you'll see in the back of my photo, like, it's all
I was gonna
EPS.
say there is not a single pivot drive.
No, it's been yeah. So you see those kind of go opposite directions. Like the pivot drive's out, and it's great, and I love taking the pivot drive out. But even I personally, I take motors like when I'm
Yeah.
doing things. You know, I'm either paddling down the river point to point, or I'm throwing a motor on the thing, and I'm doing what I need to do.
Yeah, spot locking on a river, spot locking in the lake in high winds. I'll tell you
Yeah,
what, those boats are fantastic. Spot locked in the wind, they
yeah,
just bone straight.
yeah,
There's a lake that I fish up here. It's one of those lakes that in New Hampshire, it's like one of the worst best kept or one of the worst secrets.
yeah.
It's the one that until you dive down the hole, you don't know it exists, and then you go there and you're like, this is
Nice.
magic.
Yeah,
And
I
then
love this place.
everybody's going there, and you're like, I thought I had this place to myself.
Yeah, and you explain it to like an old time, and they're like, "Dude, we've been fishing that for like 50 years," and you're like,
Yeah.
well, okay, yeah,
All the models of the NuCanoes that I've seen have handled wind like champions.
yeah."
And
I think it's a
it's
big part of the design.
it is because they're really good aerodynamically up front because they cut so well with that
Mhm.
nice point that they come to, as opposed to somebody like a not to bash on any of the companies, but with Bonafide's design, it seems like it's a little flatter on the front face, making it a little more prone to getting pushed around in the wind in either direction. Maybe not
Yeah,
much,
yeah. You
but
see this even the Frontier 12 versus the Unlimited. The Unlimited is a lot more low profile and doesn't have as much rocker when you look at the side of it, you know.
yeah,
So like you even see like so now it's like the Unlimited, the U10, and the Flint, and all those just cut so well in the water and in through the air.
yeah, especially on the top of a car or on a trailer.
Hey, there you go. Yeah,
You got to get them there.
aerodynamics.
You got to get them there. That's the big thing. Boat's no good
Gotta
if it
get it
don't
there.
make it to the launch, and if we don't make it to launch, you don't make no good fishing memories.
Yeah, yeah, and like, and while so many guys trailer, and I trailer a lot of my stuff too, that we need to be able to be back of the truck on top of the rig because that's we're buying a lot of access points there.
Yep. I actually I built my own trailer last year because I'm a welder by trade. So I do a
Nice.
lot of tinkering around with stuff. Like I was
Yeah,
working on making a drawer that mounted to the rails of the fusion seat. So that way I could
yeah,
have an 8-inch slider out of the front so that way I could keep all my stuff under there. But yeah, I can
yeah. But
do it.
yeah, that was a big project, man. Like, always kind of designing and looking at like what it could be for under seat, and then working with the Attack to kind of nail that down was great.
Yeah, you guys do a lot of work with Yak Attack. I mean,
Yeah,
it goes to show that it is a DIY boat because Yak Attack has everything under the sun to connect
yeah. That's been a
rail
big
system.
point of ours going through this process is like we want to play well with all the other companies. Like we want to make an open platform so people can bring things to it and innovate within our sphere. Like we don't need to do everything ourselves. Like if Yak Pack has a great solution for something, let's do it. The side tray I think we just came out with was originally thought of by a guy who had the company Ivy Irie, and he was on the Facebook pages and doing that thing. So we got a hold of him and we're like, hey, like, can we kind of take this and run with it? Like this is what we're thinking and working together. And it's just great to see the ideas come from everyone within.
And it's nice that you guys actually work with us as fishermen or as enthusiasts of kayaks to be
Yeah.
able to work with a company and be like, not to be gloating or anything of that nature, just to be able to say, hey, I helped with that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the coolest
It's a
thing, man. Like, we all do the
really
same
cool
stuff.
part about what you
Yeah.
guys do. Because I
I mean,
see
that's
the
what,
unlimited groups, the NuCanoe owners groups, and everybody's posting something in there all the time.
yeah. And we go through those. Like, it's not like those just like sit in the nebulous. I mean, I don't see every post that goes by, but like, they're super valuable. So, like, I'm on there learning and growing with everyone else. I'm like, oh, I've never thought about using that in that capacity. Or like, oh, yeah, that is a really good point of something we can kind of work on or whatever it is. I mean, that's the point is to be small and agile so we can make these decisions and cuts and turns and all this stuff. So far, so good.
Now, here's a question for you. We talked a
Yeah.
couple about like unique things we've seen or a couple memories that I've shared with you, but what's one of the most memorable fishing trips you've taken
Yeah.
on one of your boats? What do we got?
Yeah. We've done some crazy stuff, man. I'm excited to do even more. We got some really interesting projects for 2025 lined up, but I think it was 2023, I think it's this photo. Yeah, it's this photo here. Stu with this tarpon. We were doing like a Florida road trip, from east to west coast, and it's one
I
of
saw
those
clips
first
of that.
yeah, it's one of the first projects that I was heading up, in that capacity. And we were out of Amelia Island on the East Coast. I had never been to Florida. I had never been fishing in Florida. I've been to Orlando for ICAST or something like that before, I think. But we hooked this. So we launched. We had to go around this 2 mile jetty. So we dropped the NuCanoes off, and we had a mothership that was giving us supplies. And we hiked them over the jetty, and then we put them back in the water, met back up on the other side, got out, saw a bunch of tarpon rolling, launched all the kayaks, and within 15 minutes, we were hooked up on this tarpon. And then Stuart was just getting like a sleigh ride, so he was gone. I was trying to run video, so I was like motoring my kayak as fast as I can. The big boat is like circling with the Will on it, shooting content. And then it starts to rain. And I was like, yeah, get the content, get the content, get the content. And we do this like glorious release. And I have a photo of the fish being released, and it's just starting to pour rain. And we're getting on the big boat, trying to run it. The full storm is happening at this point. Like it is like raining sideways. We're like getting bucked up everywhere. We get dropped back off in the jetty. We're like over the jetty with the kayaks, but the water level is coming up because the tide's also coming in. We get to the other side. We can't see like 20 yards anymore, and we're like, dude, this isn't good. So we're getting the kayaks started like to go. We see the boat. It like almost misses us. And we're like waving the boat down, and we have to like get onto the mothership. The kayaks are doing great. Like we're making headway in this giant storm, which is
Kayaks were
amazing.
great. We were in rough shape.
We were in rough shape, and we like we tie off the kayaks. We get on the main ship. So like, dude, we have to go too far. And I had been on a lot of boats in my life, and the storm was coming from like a lot of different directions. And I was just making jokes because I was like, it's gonna be fine. Like I'm trying to film, and the water is coming so hard, like I can't get my phone to film because it's like getting knocked out of my hand and the water is on the screen. And I was like, dude, this is kind of rough. And I look at the buddy who's a charter captain down there who runs the boat. And this guy has his hood up, and he's just like white as a ghost and like knuckling the wheel. And he's like, I don't know if we're going to make it. And I was like, what do you mean you don't know if we're going to make it? He's like, dude, like we're pulling on a lot of water. Like we might go over. And I was like, this isn't fun anymore. What are you talking about? We might go over. And then just like white knuckle the whole way in. Dude, the kayaks do perfectly. We tied them up at this point. Like we're on the way in. We get into the harbor. We have a busy pole on one of them. It's like snapped. Like everything's like busted up. And we show up there. The sheriff is there. The Coast Guard is there. Everyone's like, are you the guys who are out there on kayaks? We're like, yeah, that was us. They're like, dude, people are getting lost out there. Like we got like so many calls about you guys. But it turned out great. We have a super cool interview with Stu afterwards where he just looks like shell shocked. And I have him in the kayak on the side. And I was like, how'd it go? And he's just like head down. He's like, dude, that was nuts. Like we almost died. And I was like, but you caught a tarpon. He's like, I caught a tarpon. So that was one of the cooler ones from the shoots and stuff we had gone on. We've seen some cool stuff since then, but had just a good mix of like crazy and
You had enough of the great memories along with the oh shit moments.
yeah, it was like highs and then like deep lows. And I'm sure in that story there's a lot of like caution signs that I should probably put out there, like don't go kayaking in storm. Just don't do it. It's not worth it. But if you are, I mean, it's probably best that you're in a NuCanoe, so you got some stability. But you should
The
probably
water drainage out of the NuCanoes as well. They drain.
Yeah.
I think it was Jake, and you might be able to attest to this too. Jake was telling me at one point there was a video you guys had of like you guys dumping water over an unlimited, and it didn't go under. It didn't go under. It barely got up to like the seat rails at max or something akin to that.
There's like 3 videos that kind of come to mind. There's one we shot. It wasn't me. It was a team guy put a kayak, an unlimited, when it first came out, under a waterfall. and it couldn't sink it. It would like drain out the same speed. We did some more like studio style dump water on weight capacity drainage videos as of recently. And then the personal story I have is like I was on the Columbia River out here, and a barge came by, and I was riding these waves, and you throttle up, throttle down, and I wanted to see what would happen if I just throttled down on the drop, and I stuffed it into one of them, and it went completely like underwater, and then I was just sat in my seat, and then it popped up and just drained out in like a couple seconds, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna do it again, but it did work really well and drain.
That's what Jake was telling me too, because I've had an aspirational goal at some point to go out to Lake Champlain.
Yep.
I've never been out there, and
Yep.
talking with Jake, who's obviously fished there a few times, especially
Yep.
under the national team banner for NuCanoe.
Yep. I would say Jake's a good guy to talk to for that one.
Jake told me, he was like, you'll be fine. Doesn't matter what NuCanoe you take out there, you'll be fine.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, Jake's really gonna have way more on that than I do, but you're right. I've never fished Champlain before, but Jake runs out there, Derek runs out there, and they have good things to say. I mean, it's big water, doing some crazy stuff, but the boats can. What I found is the boats can handle these situations. Like the key is to get yourself to a place that you understand. Like it's not like day one you should just jump in these kayaks and go out in the open ocean and do the stuff. Like there's still a skill set that's involved with like learning how to be safe, learning how to handle your kayak and all that kind of stuff. But that being said, like when you're ready, your unlimited's also ready, and you can get out there.
Yes, sir. I actually had an experience this past fishing season up in the great state of Maine. We were fishing Lake Annabessacook in, I forget the name of the town in Maine. And when we had looked, me and my girlfriend the day before the trip were like, okay, winds are going to be like 10 to 15. Doable. Easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there were wind gusts, I think, of like 25 to 30 miles an hour.
That's a lot.
Yeah, with white tips. And that was back when I had my motor guide wireless and it was starting to die. So I have my motor deployed in 25-mile-an-hour winds, and it's dead.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get back to the launch, and I was texting my girl at one point, going like, "You'll find the boat. You might not find me. I'm scared." There is a skill set to get through that, and having done it with a paddle, I have a little bit of a greater appreciation for how hard the wind can be and wake as a whole. Because when you have that constant, like being on the ocean, constant bombardment of wake and waves, it can get sketchy. It can get sketchy quick.
Yeah, and then there is a line, right? Like there's so far that we should be taking these kayaks in some of these environments, I mean, the drainage is there for you, all that kind of stuff, but then if you're like huge rollers and stuff, like I mean, I've been in the ocean in like 4 to 5 foot rollers before, and it does great. You really got to know how to handle it and how to point it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it comes down to like what you're comfortable with and what you can handle. I mean, and again, we have a lane, right? We're not taking these things down like class 4s. Like
no,
there's a line, right? I mean, there's
Yeah.
different tools for different jobs.
Yeah. Because to some people, they could see this and then be like, well, every problem in this looks like it's a nail, so I'm just going to beat it with the same hammer.
Yeah.
And
it's probably your most versatile hammer you've gotten in your kayak arsenal tool. Yeah, you just got to be smart out there and know your limit.
Even if the name is unlimited.
Even if it's unlimited. There you go, man.
All right. Well, we got through a lot of the questions I wanted to ask. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this with me. I really do, because
Yeah. Dude, I think it went great.
Well, I think that does it on my end. Do you have anything you want to share with anybody else for when I get this all put together?
I guess I'm just really appreciative of everyone involved with the brand, like from owners to team guys to like everyone here at the headquarters. Like it's really is a team effort when we make any of these projects happen, and we are listening to feedback. So any of you anglers out there, like get on the chats or just reach out directly with ideas. We'll see them, and then we're always innovating. So it's a good thing to be heard when you do that.
That's what you guys did with the U10s.
Hey, that U10 has really found its foothold. I'm excited to watch it grow. Yeah, that was a fun project because it was a lot of like, oh, where do I want to set my rod? And they're like, I'll set it right here, and then we just like make a channel off of it.
It's always the little things that go like
Yeah,
that extra country mile for a lot of people.
yeah, yeah. It is the little built-in features. But yeah, so I'm excited, man. Thanks for taking the time to do this, man.
And thank you for taking the time to chat with me.